Welcome to Factoring Polynomials with a Visual Guide. This is already part 7 of a series of videos to help students understand factoring polynomials completely. In this part of the tutorial series, we will be discussing the second and last technique of factoring binomials called the sum or difference of two cubes. But before we continue, these are important concepts you might want to recall. If you need to review these topics, I suggest balikan nyo talagang i-recall yung mga yon, or you are confident enough to skip to other parts of this video, click the links in the description below. But don't worry, we'll still try to explain some previous topics naman as we go along. Like previous parts in the series, let's review our visual guide, serving as our map in factoring polynomials. When factoring polynomials completely, the very first step is to get the GCMF. That's part 1 of this tutorial series. After that, we proceed to step 2, where we will use other techniques of factoring depending if what is left is a trinomial, a binomial, or a polynomial with 4 or more terms. So far, we started discussing trinomials with leading coefficient equal to 1. That is part 2 of this tutorial series. Also, nagsegue tayo to factor quadratic-like trinomials here, which was discussed in part 3. And in 2 videos so far, we learned factoring trinomials of the general form, yung case na ang leading coefficient is not equal to 1. Dalawang methods ang ginamit natin dito so far. Una, ang organized listing method. Mas mahabang way, that is part 4a. Pangalawang method, ang AC method. Mas mabilis na method, that is part 4b. Marami pang ibang methods, videos of which to be released later. Tinapos natin ang trinomials sa previous video by discussing the perfect square trinomial. In part 6, we started factoring binomials already. The first technique is called the difference of two squares. All of these in the description below. In this video, part 7, we are discussing the second and last type of factoring binomials, and it's called the sum or difference of two cubes. Before we continue discussing the sum or difference of two cubes, let us review our previous topic, the difference of two squares. Remember that when you have a binomial where the terms are perfect squares, we factor them by multiplying two binomials, the sum and the difference. That should be the first thing on your mind. Of the square root of the first term, copy that here, and the square root of the last term. Copy that here. It is also important to note that this technique only works for subtraction. That is why it's called the difference of two squares, meaning we cannot factor the sum of two squares, well, at least for real numbers. Recall that for integers, the numbers with only two factors, 1 and the number itself, are called prime numbers. For the case of non-factorable polynomials, such as the sum of two squares, they are called prime polynomials. In contrast, binomials with perfect cube terms, our lesson in this video, whether it's a sum or difference, we can factor them. Before we look at the pattern in solving the sum or difference of two cubes, we go back and observe the previous factoring techniques we covered so far. For trinomials, no matter what format, the factors are always binomial times binomial. Even the factors of the binomial difference of two squares are a binomial times another binomial. Katatapos lang natin yon. It is very important to know that the second and last type of binomial factoring, the sum or difference of two cubes, they have factors of a binomial and a trinomial. So, medyo iba ito. So, the question is, how do we recognize a sum or difference of two cubes? We simply check whether the two terms are perfect cubes. Kasi it doesn't matter whether it's plus or minus naman, they're both factorable. Before we continue, it is important then to familiarize ourselves with common perfect cube numbers. So here is a list of common perfect cubes. And beside them are their cube roots. Equally important is to be able to easily recognize perfect cube literal coefficients. Yung nag-i-involve na ng variables. So let's see some patterns. X cubed is x cubed, of course. Y cubed is y cubed, of course. Now, how about x squared cubed? It means applying the rules of exponents, multiply their exponents 2 by 3, thus it's x to the 6th power. Next, x cubed cubed means applying again the rules of exponents, multiply 3 by 3, thus it's equal to x to the 9th power. X to the 4th cubed means applying again the rules of exponents, multiply 4 by 3, thus it's x to the 12th, and so on. So, we see a pattern? Yes. All perfect cube literal coefficients have exponents that are divisible by 3. That's how we recognize them. On the other hand, we can say that the cube root of x cubed is x. The cube root of x to the 6 is x squared. The cube root of x to the 9th is x cubed, and so on. See a pattern again? Yes, to get the cube root of literal coefficients, we simply divide their exponents by 3. Let us now discuss in detail, recognize, and memorize the patterns in factoring the sum or difference of two cubes. Let's start with the sum of two cubes. We expect that the factors are a binomial times a trinomial. So let's start with the binomial first. So the first part of the factored expression is a binomial x plus y. It is the sum of the cube roots of the original terms. Ito, yung cube root nito. The sign between the terms in this factor is the same as the sign in the original expression. Next, the trinomial factor. So, the first term, x squared, is the square of the first cube root. The middle term, negative xy, is the product of the two cube roots. The sign of this term is the opposite of the sign of the original expression, opposite. The last term, y squared, is the square of the second cube root. The sign of this term is always positive, always positive. These signs or operations are a source of confusion for many students. So, here's an acronym to remember them. It's SOAP, S-O-A-P. S meaning same sign, O means opposite sign, and AP means always plus or always positive. Mas madali, no? So that's it. This pattern applies to both the sum and difference of two cubes, with the signs being the only difference. But still, SOAP will always apply. Okay, let's do example number 1. Let's factor this binomial, 27x³ plus 1. Step 1. Get the cube roots of the terms. So, cube root of 27 is 3. And the cube root of x³ is x. And of course, the cube root of 1 is 1. So, this is a sum of two perfect cubes. We are thus expecting a binomial and a trinomial as factors. Step 2. Apply the correct formula or pattern. Okay, unahin natin yung binomial factor first. Copy the first cube root, that is 3x, and then copy the second cube root, which is 1. Remember that the operation is the same to the original. It's still plus. Let's go to the trinomial factor this time. Let's square the first cube root 3x. So set it up first and remember to put
parenthesis. Importante ito, lalong-lalo na if we are dealing with a numerical coefficient and a literal coefficient. Next, get the product of the first and the second cube root. So, let's multiply 3x and 1. Remember that the sign is opposite. Yes, that's opposite of the original expression here. So, it's minus. And lastly, square the second cube root 1. Set it up first and remember to put parentheses. It's a good habit to do that. And since we are getting the square, this should always be positive. Always positive. Now, let's highlight here the acronym SOAP, which can be a big help to remember the operations. So, next, we copy the binomial factor because we can't simplify them anymore, those two terms. Then, we simplify the terms of the trinomial. So, quantity 3x squared is actually 3 squared x squared. So, it's 9x squared. Recall the rules of exponents. 3x times 1 is 3x. And finally, 1 squared is 1. That's it. We have factored this sum of 2 cubes. But of course, we shouldn't forget to check our answer. So that's step 3. We can do that by multiplying the factors. So the vertical method of factoring polynomials is used. Notice that only 2 terms will remain and equal to the original binomial 27x³ plus 1. Thus, our factors are correct. Here's another example. This time, it involves exponents more than 3. Let's factor this binomial, 8a to the 6th minus 125. So, step 1, get the cube roots of the terms. So, cube root of 8 is 2. And for the literal coefficient, the cube root of a to the 6th is a, copy the variable, raised to the exponent 6 divided by 3. Meron tayong example sa earlier part ng video. So, it's actually a squared. First cube root done. Now, for the second cube root, the cube root of 125 is 5. So, this is a difference of 2 cubes. We are thus expecting a binomial and a trinomial as factors. So, step 2. Apply the correct formula or pattern. So, binomial factor first. Copy the first cube root, 2a squared. And then copy the second cube root, which is 5. Remember that the operation is the same to the original. It's still minus. For the trinomial factor, let's square the first cube root 2a squared. So set it up first and remember to put parentheses. Next, the product of the first and second cube root. So let's multiply 2a squared and 5. Remember that the sign is opposite of the original expression here. So it's plus. And lastly, square the second cube root 5. So set it up first and remember to put parentheses. It's a good habit to do that. And since we are getting the square, this should be always positive, always positive. Again, recall SOAP, which can be a big help to remember the operations or signs in the factors. So, next we copy the binomial factor. Then we simplify the terms in the trinomial. Quantity 2a squared is 2 squared, that's 4. A squared is a to the 4th. So it's 4a to the 4th. Recall the rules of exponents. Next, 2a squared times 5 is 10a squared. And finally, 5 squared is 25. That's it. So we have factored this sum of 2 cubes. And of course, step 3, you don't forget to check your answer. We can do that by multiplying the factors. as shown here. Notice that only two terms will remain. Yung iba makakancel and will be equal to the original binomial 8a to the 6th minus 125. So, our factors are correct. So, now it's your turn. You're now ready for some exercises. Here are some questions. You can pause this video now to try them. Kaya yan! Go! Here are the answers and solutions. Be sure to check your answer. So, I hope you got them. See you sa next video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Happy solving!